hello, Dustin, Tracy, or James, whichever of you may get the lucky chance to grade this video. Let's just hop into this. So, misconceptions as pertaining to science education are beliefs about science that aren't necessarily true or have little to no uphold with scientific fact. The misconceptions I talked to my students in practicum about was the one where students were asked to read from a list and then select the objects they thought that reflected light. Both of the students that I used this misconception on selected the shiny objects, such as like a mirror or a tinfoil or a coin. And it's a misconception because all objects reflect light. That's how we see colors. And then another misconception would be the idea that a feather would fall slower than a bowling ball because of their mass, the difference in mass. The feather does obviously fall slower, but it's not because of mass, it's because of the different surface areas and how it floats down instead of like shooting down. In order to use these misconceptions as a leverage in my future classroom, we could have a class-wide discussion, and when a misconception is brought up by a student, I can use a physical demonstration or a video that I find on the internet to prove them wrong. Not prove them wrong, but to eliminate the misconception in their mind. But also, I think it's a good idea to make sure I don't mention misconceptions if the students don't bring them up in the first place, to avoid putting those ideas in their minds. Because students would hear those and then latch onto that and possibly believe that that's the truth instead of what I'm trying to teach them. So avoiding mentioning any misconceptions in the classroom in front of students at all possible is ideal. Moving on to progression of the standards. The NGSS contains a lot of overlap when it comes to their DCIs and their CCCs. This overlap creates an interconnectedness between each grade level and makes the learning feel relevant to students from kindergarten to 6th grade. Yeah, let's say 6th grade because that's where elementary ends. Sorry. An example of this would be the learning about energy, LS1.C. In K through 2, they learn about energy from plants or other animals and how plants need water and light, how animals eat plants or other animals and gain energy. And then moving on to 3 through 5, they continue this learning but at a deeper level, and that the same things they need for energy provide warmth, growth, and cellular or body repair. Lastly, in 6th through 8th in middle school, all of these ideas are utilized and reviewed, and then they build upon them to learn about photosynthesis within plants, and they also learn about how the chemicals in food are rearranged when digested to release energy. And then talking about PS13, before 5th grade, students only address this standard once in 2nd grade. In 2nd grade, they talk about how to disassemble an object and use the same materials to create a different object. This transitions into 5 PS13, where they are asked to measure and make observations about objects. Yeah. I would address this standard by creating an experiment in class where we take 5 or so different types of white powders, such as baking soda, flour, sugar, salt, and then what's another one? We could do like powdered sugar, maybe, even though it's similar but different, you know? And then they would use their knowledge on making observations, like using taste, touch, sight, smell, even though none of those powders would smell very much, to differentiate between the 5 and list out which ones are which, and then I would assess if they got them right or wrong, and we would talk about their mistakes that they made, or what they got correct, and we would discuss how they got to those conclusions. And yeah, I think that's a great lesson to address learning about how to make observations. Then in middle school, they continue this discussion about PS13 by talking about how synthetic materials are derived from natural resources in the beginning. So, such as like plastic is made from oil, which originally comes from dinosaurs, which would be a natural resource. Okay, so moving on to the 5E learning cycle. First in the list, even though it is a cycle, so there's no right or wrong way to go about doing the 5E, first on the list is engage. This is where the teacher assesses for prior knowledge and gains student interest in the topic. An example of this could be a class discussion or a pretest that you administer to your students. And then next is the explore stage, where students experience the new concept through new learning experiences. That is very repetitive. Hands-on opportunities. This is where experiments, like actual scientific experiments, usually occur, and students can apply the scientific method. Example of this, like the experiment I mentioned for 5PS13, this is the stage that would occur. Then moving on to the explain phase. This phase is focused on the teacher, or it's more focused on the teacher. Obviously, it's still about the students, but it's teacher-led, and it's all about deepening the learning that occurred in the explore stage. So this is where the students can share their learning, what they did in the experiment and what they observed. And this allows the teacher to teach the deprived areas of knowledge. An example of this would be explaining the concept through like Bill Nye videos or a teacher-created PowerPoint. Then the fourth stage is elaborate. Here, the students are allowed to apply their knowledge and create deeper meaning. An example would be students could create presentations, whether they be physical or digital, and they would present these to the class, or they could just present them to the teacher, depending on what the assignment may be. And then the last stage is evaluate. This phase is where the assessment occurs. Teachers observe students to guarantee the understanding of the topic. And, sorry, I guess I didn't write down the example for that. An example would be a summative assessment, whether it be paper or an authentic assessment. An authentic assessment could be combining the evaluate and elaborate phase, where they just design a project and present it, and that can be used as their assessment. Okay, and then talking about the engineering design process, the EIE plan is a cycle, much like the 5E plan. The steps include ask, imagine, plan, create, and improve. In my opinion, deep learning occurs in the create stage, because this is where students explore issues hands-on and then reflect on what went wrong, and they make improvements and they try again. I believe this because this is where I learned best when we played with the Legos in class, on one of our last days in class together. So yeah, that's what I have for that. And then moving on to feedback, the assignment I thought was most helpful was where we partnered up with someone else in the class, and then we taught to another group in the class. I thought it was great because it felt more, I wasn't afraid to give feedback, like speaking in front of a class of people, it was great to be able to work on a 5E lesson plan with someone else, so I wasn't being thrown into it by myself, and I wasn't as intimidated. The assignment that wasn't helpful, I can't really think of any. Honestly, I loved this class. It was great. I was always a big science person in high school, and I was really excited to come into this class. I loved the environment, and you guys were awesome this whole semester. I struggle with online learning, so anything we did post spring break, it wasn't helpful for me because that's just not the way I can learn. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you for this semester. You guys were awesome. And I'm really sad our time was cut short. But you can't help it. I hope I get to see you guys in Bluemont in the fall. And yeah, I'll see you later. Goodbye.